Welcome, everybody, as we go to visit the Vatican, the smallest city-state in the world.
Looking for a meeting point. I believe is going to be right here at this little kiosk looking thing.
The Vatican is old, but as a country it is pretty young. The Vatican city-state was established by treaty in the year 1929, and with an area of about 110 acres and an official population of 618, it is the smallest sovereign state in the world by both area and population.
We are currently on a skip the line tour here at the Vatican. We all have earphones in and we're listening to the lady talk to us.
As you can see, you can get in by waiting in line or being escorted on a tour. We chose the tour because our time was limited and we wanted to make sure that we saw all the highlights. Unlike most countries you visit, you are not required to show your passport, although technically you are required to have ID on you. You also have to go through security, which consists of an X-ray bag check and walking through a metal detector. The Vatican is considered a religious complex, but every hallway is literally filled with antiquities, which also make it a giant museum. In this wing, we were looking at different Roman statues. In the Tapestry Hall, you can find the Belgian tapestries that were commissioned by Pope Leon X in the year 1509. On the left is the work of the master Raphael, and on the right is that of his students. I personally could not tell the difference in the two pieces of art.
And if you pay attention, you see that Jesus Christ seems to follow you all the time. The Mona Lisa and the Paleolithic, be careful what are you doing, because he's still following you. Try to be good boys and girls.
In 1580, the Vatican controlled all of Italy, and Pope Gregory XIII had a problem. He wanted to understand how big that really was. So he commissioned a map room that detailed every location under control of the Vatican. There are details of Italy, Corsica, and Sardinia. The ceiling of this hallway is hand-painted with accents in gold to make more use of depth perception. From 1667 to 1699, the Ottoman Empire battled against the Holy Roman Empire. At one point, the Ottomans, also known as the Turks, had succeeded in conquering Vienna. This mural depicts the moment in 1683 when the Vatican army pushed back the Turks and declared Europe free from the Ottoman Empire. This mural by Francesco Podesti shows the moment on December 8, 1854, when the Vatican declared the Immaculate Conception, that states that Mary was given a special grace by God and therefore was born without sin. The Borgia Apartments were the sleeping area for Pope Alexander VI in the 15th century, and the murals were done by Spanish muralists that reflect the many mysteries of God. this room, called the School of Athens, the master muralist Raphael contemplates the knowledge of all the great philosophers, and how knowledge is divine, and therefore reflected on the glory of God. If you know where to look, you will find a depiction of the great painter Michelangelo trying to figure out what to paint in the Sistine Chapel just next door. Many come to the Vatican to see ancient art, but new art is still being gifted to the Vatican every day.
Calavera.
Before there was Michelangelo, there was Botticelli. His murals would be the inspiration for generations to come. The main entrance to the Sistine Chapel is the Royal Stairway, which is used by visiting dignitaries. The glory of the Vatican is the Sistine Chapel. It is in this room that the Pope is elected. From 1508 to 1512, Michelangelo painted the ceiling. Later, in 1535, Michelangelo was invited back to paint the altar in which he painted the Last Judgment. From the Sistine Chapel, we were escorted through another security checkpoint and into St. Peter's Basilica. The first thing we saw at St. Peter's Basilica was the Holy Door. This door is sealed and is only opened once every 25 years. They say if you come when it is open, you are automatically granted forgiveness of your sins. Immediately when you enter the basilica, you are struck with how big it is. The main focal point is Peter's balcony that marks the spot where the Apostle Peter's tomb is located. It is said that the copper made from this structure might have come from the Pantheon itself. Michelangelo's Pieta is made out of Carrara white marble, which was commissioned as a funeral monument for a French cardinal. It was finished in 1499, and the story goes that Michelangelo overheard some installers attribute the sculpture to a different artist, so he carved his name on it. It was put in its present position in the basilica in the 18th century. In 1972, a crazy man chopped off Mary's hand and nose. It was restored and is now behind a bulletproof glass window. Most of the past popes that are buried in St. Peter's are buried below the basilica, but one of them that is above ground is that of St. John Paul II, who was recently moved to the basilica after he was named a saint. St. Peter's Basilica is purposely the largest Catholic church in the world. On the floor, you will find little markers that show the size of other Catholic churches. Here is the tomb of St. John the 23rd, who was also named a saint. He was known as the Good Pope and shocked the world in the 1950s when he declared that everyone was equal before God. The dome of St. Peter says, "Tu eres Petrus," you are Peter. The actual tomb is down below, but there is a cutout at the altar so the person that is at the altar can see down into the tomb. In the basilica, there is constant motion. There are back-to-back services all day long. Tourists and pilgrims constantly mingle together. This altar is known as the Pomarencio and was done in 1604. The image above looks like a painting, but is actually a very detailed mosaic. Actually, there are no paintings inside the basilica. They are all mosaics. On the way out, there was a wonderful nativity set up. The nativity celebrates the humble birth of Jesus Christ. What amazed me about this nativity set is that several pieces moved and that there was both a day and a night version. I filmed this little bit to show how tall it is inside the basilica. In fact, at this point the ceiling is 448 feet high. Right when you leave the basilica, you will see the Vatican Obelisk. No one is certain why it is here. There are many theories. One of the popes decided to quell the dissent and decided it had to be exorcised. So he capped it with a cross and sanctified it with holy water. And it has been there ever since. The portico, also known as the atrium at the Vatican, is a very interesting design element. It is made of arches on both sides of the plaza and they curve around. The idea is that they come from the basilica like big arms ready to hug the participants coming into the basilica. Also from above, they form the shape of a key, which is an important symbol of the Apostle Peter. The Sant'Agostino Church is not in the Vatican. It is in Rome, near a plaza called the Piazza Navona, but it has something very interesting that I wanted to show you. This painting by Caravaggio is called Madonna di Loreto. It paints Mary just as a humble servant girl and some humble pilgrims coming to pay homage to the Christ child. This is one of my favorite paintings in the world because it shows how we, as humble pilgrims, can come to God. I hope you enjoyed this little tour of the Vatican. If you did, please give me a thumbs up and comment on your favorite part. Thank you for watching, and please join me for another crazy Pedrosa adventure.